yin to my yang to my yang to Z. Put a grin on my chin when you come to me, 'cause I'll win, I'm a one of a kind, and I'll bring death to the place you're about to be. Another river of blood running under my feet. Forged in a fire lit long ago. Stand next to me, you'll never stand alone. I'm last to leave, but the first to go. Lord, make me dead before you make me old. I feed on the fear of the devil inside of the enemy faces in my sight. Aim with a hand, shoot with a mind, kill with a heart like Arctic ice.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on.
I am a warrior, this is my song.
I am a warrior and this is my song. I'll bask in the glow of the rising war, lay waste to the ground of an enemy shore.
I read you Lima Charlie, loud and clear.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Lima Charlie. Glad you could join us tonight. And as you can see, I got an old friend of ours, Mr. Doc Simpson. Mike has been on this show many times and very close to Toby and I. And Doc, glad you could join me tonight, man.
Glad to be here, man. Thanks for dusting off the cobwebs and getting me back on.
That's it. Well, he's like, we got the groupies out there that, they were like, can you give us Doc? I'm like, okay, we got to get our numbers up. So, hey, good to see you. So Lima Charlie, loud and clear, hearing the messages, hearing the stories from the downrange time. So we'll get right into it. Kind of give our listeners and viewers a little bit about, when you joined, when did you join and what branch did you get into?
So I joined. So I signed into delayed entry in 1983. So yes, that's how old I am. So Ronald Reagan was president. It kind of had become cool to be a patriot again, and become cool to be an American again. And for those that don't remember, the 70s was kind of a rough time to be an American. And like everywhere you looked, you were basically told, oh, our heyday is over. We're not a world leader anymore. We're not the shining beacon on the hill that we used to be. Nobody respects us. The Cold War was in full force, and to be honest, we weren't doing so well. But then Reagan became president, and like that all changed. It was cool to wave a flag again. It was cool to be proud of being an American again. It was cool to have good old-fashioned American values again. And he showed in pretty short order that he wasn't going to take shit. He was going to stand up to the evil empire that was the Soviet Union and all these little tin-plated dictators all around the world that, he wasn't going to put up with their shit anymore. And I had known for a while that I wanted to join the military. And to me, the reason, I chose the United States Army because I wanted to do something a little bit extra special. And, I knew a little bit, I knew about paratroopers and I knew about Rangers and I knew about special forces and I wanted to be a Green Beret. That's what I wanted.
Right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate. And that's, and I talked to other recruiters and I actually went and took the ASVAB test with the Navy because I had a buddy of mine wanted to go in the Navy. He ended up going in the Army also, but at the time he was taking practice tests with them and he set up a date with them to take it. And the reason, the Navy recruiters, of course, were talking to me about, they're like, why do you want to go in the Army? Well, I want to be a Green Beret. Oh, they were hyping up the SEALs big time. My dad had been in the Navy, so I started talking to him about the SEALs, and it actually started sounding really good. But what happened is one of the Navy recruiters accidentally let slip what was going to happen. So basically, what they told me is, they said, okay, there is no SEAL contract. You're going to go to boot camp, and then you're going to go to your A school or whatever it's called, and then you're going to have to volunteer to go to the SEALs. And I was like, okay, but one of the recruiters let slip that based on my ASVAB score, I'm pretty decent at taking standardized tests. So I had a pretty decent ASVAB score. And he said, well, based on your ASVAB score, the job that you're going to get, like, we don't give you as much leeway as the Army does. Like, we, in the Army, you can have the highest GT score, but still say, I want to be a cook or whatever. And they're going to be like, okay, fine. We're just happy to have you here. He said, in the Navy, it doesn't work that way. He said, I can tell right away, you're going to be on a nuclear submarine. That's based on your ASVAB score, you're going to end up on a nuclear submarine. And then he said, he kind of caught himself right after he said it, but he made the comment that if you get into one of these lower strength, MOSs, you're not going to have that opportunity to volunteer to go to be a SEAL, to go to BUDS. And I was like, oh, okay, well, all bets are off then. So now I'm going to go back to the Army again. I did talk to the Marine Corps a little bit. I think I still remember that. What's odd is I still remember the name of the Marine Corps recruiter in my high school. His name was Staff Sergeant Buey. And he was something of a stalker. Like, if you never wanted to give this guy your phone number because he would never stop calling you. And it was just like this air of desperation. I was like, man, the Marine Corps just must be totally desperate. And the weird thing is he knew nothing about, to him, like, if you said, what kind of elite units are there in the Marine Corps? And I didn't know about Force Recon. I didn't know about Recon Battalion. But to him, that was like an insult. It's like, no, all Marines are equal. You just should just be proud of being a Marine. Like, even if you're a Marine supply sergeant, you should be proud of being a Marine. Like, I can't even believe you're asking this question. And I just knew that whatever I did, I wanted to do something that was as challenging as possible. I wanted to keep after challenges until, I either achieved everything or I reached, the Peter principle. I reached the point of failure. And I ended up not getting an SF contract out of high school. I ended up getting a Ranger contract, which in retrospect was the absolute best thing for me as far as, instilling discipline and, starting out in that environment in Ranger Regiment was really ideal for me right out of high school.
So you got in the Rangers 11 Bravo or 11 X-ray or
yeah. It was an 11X contract.
Yeah. I
was an 11 Bravo. I didn't get funneled into Charlie or anything else. And, thank God I didn't make me a tow gunner or something like that. I think it was 11 Hotel.
11 Bravo. Yeah. 11 Hotel or
11 Hotel. Yeah. So I did ultimately get the Charlie 2 identifier because I became qualified as a dragon gunner once I got to regiment, because I was in a recoilless rifle section, and we would do once a year, we would do dragon gunnery also.
Were you shooting 106, the Carl Gustav? Were you able to do
so that? I was, I actually, myself and former regimental Sergeant Major Mike Hall were actually the ones who wrote the proposal for us to adopt the Carl Gustav. And they got the first Carl Gustav delivered actually as I was out processing. So I got to put my hands on it, and I got to kind of get a feel for it. I never got to go to a range with it, though.
Oh, what battalion were you in the Ranger Regiment?
I was in 1st Battalion in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, in 1st Battalion. Okay. So you went into Rangers, and then were you there when you put in for SF school for Q course and applied and all that kind of stuff? Or
I was there from 84 to 88, and then I went. I thought I wanted to get out and do some type of law enforcement, possibly Secret Service. So I was going to get out. I was going to go to college, get a degree, and do something in federal law enforcement. But I wanted to keep doing stuff. I wanted to keep jumping. I wanted to keep being around, individuals that kind of had the same mentality. So I was in 3rd Battalion, 20th Group out of Florida. Mm-hmm. And that was my avenue ultimately that led me to go into the Q course and becoming an 18 Charlie engineer sergeant, which happened actually, we ended up mobilizing during the Gulf War, and that's when I went through SFAS and the Q course and language school.
Okay, were you out of Gainesville, or where were you at in Florida?
I was I was in A Company when they were out of Ocala originally.
No
kidding.
I'm
sorry. Actually, they were actually out of Blanding originally, and then they moved to Ocala.
Yeah. I know something. My wife's entire family's from Ocala.
Yeah,
families from there. And,
pretty area. It's a unique mix of rednecks and people that own multi-million-dollar racehorses.
Yep. Yeah, that's for sure. But okay, so you were out of there, and then So got an SF, and then did you do the rest of your time in the National Guard? Or did you go back active, or?
No, I went back active. When I was in language school, I'd already decided that I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back and finish college, or at least I didn't think I did. I didn't want to go back to work at my job as a prison guard. So I said, you know what, I'm going to stay on active duty. I called up the 7th Group Sergeant Major, identified myself. I said, hey, I'd like to set up a meeting with you, basically a job interview. And after just talking to him on the phone, he goes, okay, so you came from Ranger Regiment. You got I was a 2+2 on my language score out of language school. He said, you speak Spanish. You came from Ranger Regiment. Yeah, that's good enough for me. I don't, let me get your information. He goes, I'm gonna pass you off to my secretary. She's gonna get all your information, and we're gonna have basically a letter of acceptance ready for you. And he wrote me a letter of acceptance. So I had to retake the ASVAB again, actually, go through MEPS again. Yeah, I know, it was kind of weird. They had a weird rule at the time that it's you had to retake the ASVAB if it had been more than a certain number of years. So I had to retake the ASVAB.
Your GT score was higher.
I think it was exactly the same, actually. I think I got exactly the same both times, maybe like a point higher. I went through the MEP station there in Raleigh, and then drove myself back to Fort Bragg, where I actually already had an apartment, and signed into the 19th replacement, and went to group. So, and I spent 11 years in 7th Group. Somewhere in there, I transitioned and I went to the old 18 Delta course when I was at Fort Sam and changed MOSs. So I did a little less than half my time as an engineer and a little more than half my time as a medic.
Okay, I was going to ask what you first went in as, an SF. So you're an engineer.
Yeah.
And then the 18 Delta school. Okay. So you obviously great career. I mean, that's pretty storied right there, and an interesting path you took to get. So then when did you find yourself? What are some of the deployments you have under your belt? I know in Special Forces, you're going to have a number of maybe shorter ones that maybe what people see in conventional forces, but where were some of the places you deployed in combat?
Yeah. So when I was on the team, multiple times to Colombia, multiple times to Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, training deployments to, Panama, Costa Rica. Pretty much we were really, really, really heavily involved in the drug war at the time. Right. I had some CONUS deployments also in support of Joint Task Force 6. So working with Border Patrol, working with a lot of law enforcement in the southwestern United States, trying to cover a very large and very porous border during the Clinton administration that was kind of heralded what we're going to be facing in this day and age. It wasn't fentanyl back then, but there was a lot of coke and a lot of weed coming across the border during that time.
Yeah. So a lot of JTF-6 back in the day, that was the border mission. Only real thing, unless like say Desert Storm or Somalia or something else was happening. That was the only real world thing happening for the military for a long time.
We had there was I first treated battlefield trauma when I was deployed to Bolivia. I was there for 6 months. I ran a clinic out of a little place called Chimere, and I was there during the Cocalero uprising of '97. So saw a lot of gunshot wounds, some explosive trauma, because the narcos were real big on taping rocks to sticks of dynamite and using them as expedient grenades. So I saw a lot of that. When I was in Peru, didn't have any direct engagement, but did a lot of stuff coordinating aircraft to intercept narco aircraft and to eliminate them with prejudice. So I did have some real world experience that did involve, trying to use I don't want to use an insensitive colloquialism like stacking bodies, but let's just say that there were bad guys meeting their end in the 90s, and a lot of kind of brush fire conflicts that people tend to forget about.
Yes, we were successful in kinetic operations.
Yeah, that's the best way to say it.
How's that for a political spin? But yeah, so when you think back to that, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that during that time in the night, whatever, because the media wasn't covering it, to be honest. That we had, being a Army brat of a career Special Forces soldier, born at Bragg myself and stuff. I mean, we were stationed in Panama when I was a kid, I just know that there were things always happening around the world that Special Forces were doing, and we were doing all that during that time, right? We were, like you said, participating in all through Central and South America. Just no one ever really knew about it because no one ever told them it was really happening. So if you weren't close to it, you had no idea that we had soldiers in harm's way. It didn't have to wait until Iraq or Afghanistan or some other desert war, or even the Haiti almost thing happening, or grenade.
Mhm.
That. But so when you think back to that time, and you think, I mean, that was of course a minute ago, but any particular things that kind of stand out to you that just of any kind of any flavor of story, that any event that happened that just really
Mhm.
impact on you and just something you have never forgotten about?
I think the biggest one for me, well, I don't know if it's the biggest, but it's the one that comes to mind in this instance is actually it was not my last deployment with SF, but it was my second to last. I ended up deploying as team sergeant. I was in E7 about a week out from we were due to deploy to there's a couple of different areas in South America you'll hear referred to as Tres Esquinas, so the three corners area. Not to be confused with the Triple Frontier movie, that's one of the worst things ever put on film. But there's a couple different areas in South America that are referred to as the Three Corners area, where three countries come together. I was in a place called Larandia, Colombia, which is one of these places. And about a week before the deployment, my team sergeant was having really, really, really bad back problems. And in retrospect, he probably seriously herniated a disc at the time. But I knew there was no way that he was going to deploy, and I was already thinking about that. And then the company sergeant major approached me and he said, "Hey, I don't think he's gonna be able to saddle up. So you're the senior guy. I expect you to step up and pick up the reins." And I said, "Roger, sergeant major, it'll happen." So I ended up deploying as team sergeant to Larandia, and pretty run of the mill deployment for the most of it. We were basically doing a retraining of one of the counter narcotics companies that we had actually trained with previously. It was a little bit of a pain in the ass because you never want to deploy with anybody outside your team. It's just
Right.
it's just messy, and it's more people to worry about. And it was for SF, it was a very large, bulky deployment. It's because the B team was there, so you feel like the B team is breathing down your neck all the time. There was another ODA there also at the same time. We also brought a whole bunch of enablers with us. It was just a much bigger footprint than I was accustomed to dealing with. And keep in mind too, I was in the middle of the application process for medical school at this time as well, so I had that in my mind. My first trip as team sergeant. The team, I had been away from this team for a few years doing my B team tour, came back, and there were a couple of problem children on the team that I was having issues with. Just a lot of stuff was making it overall not very enjoyable deployment. Probably the only highlight that gave us a little bit of respite is the perimeter got attacked a couple of times while we were there. So having guys come in and probe the wire, at least it kind of broke up the monotony a little bit. Fortunately, nobody on our side got hurt when any of those happened. It was just kind of interesting, kind of gave you a feel maybe what it was like during Vietnam to be at like one of those large A camps or
Right.
large perimeters, getting probed at night, having illuminated, mortar illume rounds come over the wire, right over the top of your hooch while you're sitting there trying to watch a VHS tape, stuff like that. The most interesting part about the entire deployment, though, was we were actually on this deployment during September 11th. So we got word about the towers falling, and actually, I watched them in the skiff. I watched the towers fall in real time, but you just knew at that point that our entire world had changed. Not only, the world had changed, the country was going to change, but the way we approach things in the military was going to change as well. And we had a lot of conversations about that, and about the fact that, we've been essentially at war all through the 90s. We've been doing our job. Like, it's not really, to a man, is not going to significantly change for us. And of course, we didn't know at that time, is 7th Group even going to be involved? Like, what's that going to look like? But it was interesting, seeing 9/11 happen while you were deployed, involved in something else that, like you say, that the news doesn't cover.
Right.
And that was the big thing that we talked about too, is like, well, now people have not been paying attention to the military basically for a decade. Now they're going to be paying attention again. Like now, and you noticed it really right away when you got home, especially when you were around civilians, even in a place like Fayetteville. It's, people just weren't looking at you the same because we were at war now. And of course, that was the point. Fort Bragg was an open post up until 9/11. So when we left, Fort Bragg was an open post. We get home, it's not an open post anymore. And that's one of the first things when we're unloading our gear in the team room the night we got back, and the company sergeant major telling us, hey, when you come into work tomorrow, give yourself an extra 45 minutes. And I'm like, I live in Stewart's Creek. I only live like 4 miles away from post. He's like, it's going to take you 45 minutes to get through the gate. And this is the new normal. So get used to it. And it's interesting in retrospect to look at that. And, like you say, the fact that, mom and pop and, your Joe Lunchbox and Sally Housecoat didn't necessarily know that the military was in places all around the world all the time, in harm's way, answering the call, that deployments, combat deployments were a thing pre 9/11. They just weren't paid attention to.
Right.
And
when you're looking back, I mean, you talked about, you knew the military was going to change, the country was going to change, but interestingly enough, in the SF world, that the SF mission was really, I mean, what we call FID, right, which is what you're doing, right, working with foreign internal defenses, was really going to be put to the side, right?
Yeah.
SF itself was going to switch to door kicking and very kinetic, and no longer, soft caps in the jungle, helping people learn how to shoot, march, and do whatever, and basic tactics, but really be the front end of that. Was there any thought then that, like, oh, we're about to get thrown into this, or had that?
Initially, we didn't think so. Initially, we thought this was going to be, if you look at, the duration of wars that we had previously, everybody kind of expected that, I think, going into it. So, the word that we got when we got back to Bragg was, you can forget it. Basically, any shooting school, 5th group, 10th group, and 3rd group are going to have, mostly 5th group, then some 10th group, and then 3rd group down the line are going to have priority on those. 1st group and 7th group are just going to probably keep doing their own thing. This probably isn't going to last all that long. Boy, were we wrong about that, right? And it wasn't, but we did actually, that got figured out, I should say, within the year. Because before I went to medical school, it was definitely figured out that, hey, we're all going to get a turn at bat on this. This is going to be protracted.
Even 19th and 20th group out of the
even 19th and 20th group, and 20th group especially got really busy, backfilling. They were not only deploying overseas, but they were also backfilling 7th group, because those Central and South American missions did not go away. There were still things that needed to be done with our partners in the Western Hemisphere. That stuff still had to happen. The 7th group deployments, it used to be, a 7th group guy, by the time you'd been in group 3 years, you spoke Spanish fluently. You were most comfortable when you were deployed. You could rattle off the capital. We used to take an annual exam where we had to write down the capital cities and the president, of every country that we might work in. We had to know basic things about the geopolitical structure. the guys, the generation after me, and I know some of them, I say, you guys had it a lot different than we did. We really only had one thing to worry about, and you guys had to wear two hats. You had to speak Spanish and you had to pick up some Urdu along the way.
Right. Or
And that wasn't something, I ever had to worry about.
Right.
I picked up maybe 5 words of Quechua, never did learn to speak Guayani. So, I only had to concentrate on one language.
Right, right. So, yeah, that's interesting on the perspective of being over there 9/11 and doing a real mission. I mean, and then, okay, what does that mean just to us? But besides the country and everything, but what's that going to mean to us? Like, are we about to? They're going to tell us to pack up and head home? Like, no, you got Charlie Mike, right? You got to keep on going, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Any others from any other just recollections or things like that? I mean, obviously you dealt a lot with more so than maybe someone that was, just doing Iraq or Afghanistan, but, you were dealing a lot more with the private civilian populace. You were dealing, doing FID type missions. You were much more involved and ingrained into the locals of the country you were in. Did you build any kind of friendships, or did you have any kind of relationships that lasted for a while and that kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, when I was in Peru, I pretty much went native. I mean, I worked out of the embassy for half of that deployment, and I worked out of an outstation called Wangwi for half of that deployment. And it got to the point, like, I would go days, other than sending up a sit rep, I would go days without doing anything in English, or really communicating with anybody on the team at times. And it got to the point, you have gone native when you're dreaming, when your dreams are in Spanish. Like, everything in your dreams is in Spanish, right? And you wake up and you start forgetting the English word for things. That's when it's probably time to go home and take a knee for a little bit.
Yeah.
That was definitely, I had a lot of close contacts there. We stood up the first counter narcotics battalion in Colombia, we taught a 10-week medical course, made a lot of really strong relationships there. That was what really kickstarted and bootstrapped Plan Colombia. If people remember what that was, the big cooperative effort with the Colombian government and counter narcotics. And another one, which was probably the mission that I disliked the most, but I ended up, making some good friends, and really, it really gave me a peek into a different aspect of not only military operations but life. Was I ran two tent blocks in a Cuban refugee camp during Operation Safe Haven. That was actually the last thing I did as an 18 Charlie before I went to the medic course. So, having all these people who were, fleeing a communist dictator,
Right.
Looking for a better way of life, not, we see a lot of people, claiming political asylum now. These were legitimate political, refugees looking for asylum. It was a pretty turbulent time, and it was interesting. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about Cuba. And I think I might actually said Colombian refugees a little bit ago. I don't know. I do that. Yeah. Cuban refugees. So it was a real interesting time. Those are the things, when I was on a team, I think that stick out the most. But I had a lot of good times. I worked as an instructor at the jungle school in Panama for 6 months at one point. That was really good. Got to see things on a very, very high level. When you're working in an embassy, yeah, as a Special Forces E7, and you're giving briefings to ambassadors, and you're on speakerphone with people from the State Department all the time. Definitely puts things in perspective for you.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, didn't know that you were featured and you were on Hunting Hitler on the History Channel with our good friend Tim Kennedy for, I think, a couple seasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that must have been, I didn't realize you'd spent so much time down there. That must have been kind of like going home. I mean, I know you spent you did some time in Argentina and stuff, but still you were in South America.
Yeah. It was familiar territory for me. Like, it's when you're leaving the airport, when you get in that vehicle and you're leaving the airport, and, just the sights and the sounds and the smells, and, everything from, the street signs to the traffic roundabouts and the street vendors and everything else. It's it was very familiar to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It can, and I know exactly what you mean. Like say it's all the senses when they all get hit again, it just
Yeah.
all snaps you right back.
Yeah.
And that stuff, but a little bit different when you're, a pure civilian filming a semi reality show.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. There's a scene, if you watch the movie Flight of the Intruder, there's a scene where Willem Dafoe's character comes in. He's been heloed out to the carrier, and he steps off the back, and there's a guy who runs out there to meet him, and he said, "Hold on, give me a second. I've been away for a while. I just want to take it all in." And that reminded me of what it was like. It's it's the same. My second trip to Afghanistan. When you step off the aircraft, it's like, oh, yep, I'm back again.
Yeah.
It feels the same.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And the smells probably are the biggest, to me, have always been the biggest sense that really triggers you.
Smells are huge in memory production and in memory recall.
Yeah. So we talked, I know we're going to wrap this up here, but I know we talked mostly about Central and South America, but you do have some Middle East deployments. How many times did you deploy in the Middle East?
I deployed 5 times with JSOC. So I did one Iraq, 2 Afghanistan, and a couple more that were kind of around the Mediterranean rim doing some stuff.
Yeah.
So it's, I got some stories for that too. We could probably save those for another time.
We'll have to do a part 2 for sure.
Yeah.
You've got quite a storied career, and just, like I say, we spent almost a whole half hour just talking about, the early part of your SF career, but definitely want to have you back on, Doc, and just kind of talk about some of that. That'd be great. We can line that up again, because I'm sure there's some that probably stand out in your head from.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely some moments and some people that I think will always stand out.
Yeah. And don't always have to talk about every actual place. Some places just don't need to be known, but the stories maybe can be pretty vague enough that they can be there. But hey, no problem. Anything before we wrap up? I didn't want to keep you long tonight.
Yeah, I got one thing that I just want to shoot in there, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me on again. It's been a while.
Awesome.
I want to say, I don't know how many of your listeners follow me on social media. Some of you may have noticed that I have vanished from social media. So I wanted to address that real quick. So not quite a month ago, I guess it's a little over 3 weeks ago, I deleted all of my social media. And the reason I did that is I identified in myself that I had a legitimate social media addiction, and I had some anger management issues, and I was using social media in a very unhealthy way. Basically, I was using as a social media as an outlet to argue with people and to stir shit with people who really didn't deserve it. And I said a lot of mean things to people that I'm a little bit ashamed of. And I had to go cold turkey. So I deleted all of my social media. I will probably be back on social media in a completely different capacity at some point. It won't be an individual account. It'll probably be more like a business account type thing. But I just want to say, if you're out there and you find yourself getting sucked into the social media vortex, and you're getting those dopamine hits, it's not a healthy place to be. It's not the real world. I deleted it entirely, and I got to tell you, since I've deleted it, I sleep better. I'm happier on a day-to-day basis. I have reconnected with Jesus Christ. I'm not going to turn this into a preaching session, but it's my life is just all around way better since I've gotten off of social media. Social media can be a great tool, but if you find that you're carrying more negativity from it than you are positivity, I encourage you to just let that stuff go. Just, either delete it entirely or set limits for yourself. Me, I see it literally like being an alcoholic. So I just had to quit completely.
Yeah, you were pretty active on Instagram, and probably Instagram, I think probably more than anything else, it seems like. But yeah. No, what a awesome to be able to have that self-realization, right? To just take a moment, step back from yourself, look at it, and realize this is not who I want to be or who I was meant to be, and just step, because it's like people that are alcoholics or smoke or whatever. It's hard to just have the intestinal fortitude and discipline to do it yourself without someone pushing you or some event pushing you. So that's pretty admirable, man. And the great words of advice there.
Appreciate it.
But awesome, Mike. Well, hey, we'll let you go. Thanks for putting that out too, and we'll work together and get you on again and talk about some of those sandbox stories for sure.
All right, sounds great, man.
All right. Hey, everyone. Hey, thank you very much, Mike. Everyone else, be sure and tune in every Tuesday night here on Stu and the Nun for the Lima and Charlie episodes. We've got some great ones coming up over the next couple of weeks. And again, thank you. This is part 1 of Doc Simpson being on. So he's already committed to being a part 2. And we hope everyone has a great night.